Thank you. Thanks, Jake. Okay, saying again, um, there is I was trying to do it on really cleverly on here. Where's that NA? I don't even know. I was trying to do this really clever thing where I did countdown here, but it's definitely not working. So we'll do that another time. Okay, let's get back to. Yeah, I was going to do it like it would be super cool if I just did a scripted countdown in the terminal and then just shared the window of iTerm2. Like I thought that'd be really fun, but I realized that almost every single time when you try and do stuff like that, you copy these in off Stack Overflow, which is always a little bit dangerous. But the thing is, these types of things are always really tempting or really tentative about whether or not they're going to work on Mac. There's so many little things you have to learn about how all of these, like for example, like the date command, how it runs. And interestingly, I had actually grabbed the one that said works on OS X, but it definitely didn't. So that's okay. Yeah. So wait, watch -N1, which is second the time until stream. But that's not the countdown though. That's the opposite, right? That's going to be a stopwatch, I think. Let's just try that. Maybe I'm missing wrong. Oh, well, there you go. Okay, yeah, we'll do that another time. Yeah, Bash in general just doesn't handle it very well, so we'll do that. We'll do that another time. I also had Automator open because there's a whole bunch of steps I take in order to get my computer ready to stream. And I talked to Jake about this a while ago. What I'd like to do is make an Automator task that does as many of those as possible, and then attach that task to a button on my Stream Deck. Oh, you know what I forgot to do is going live tweet. All right, there we go. Gotta remember all this stuff. All right, so also let's do this. I tried to attach an image to that going live tweet, and it's not working. Yeah, it's still not working, so I've got to figure that out. I don't know why the image is not attaching correctly, so I want to fix that. That's okay. Yeah, I mean, Automator, I tend to use Automator instead of Alfred primarily because, well, I'm not very good at it, but I'd like to at least because it seems more like bundle it up in a little file that can run in an Emac kind of situation. So that's kind of my goal there. Okay, so we are back at OnRamp today. Let's take a look at what we're working with. Nope. All right. All right, yep, we're good. All right. Ooh, okay. All right, hey, you have plans to make OnRamp for October CMS? No, I don't. Hey, you have plans to make OnRamp for October CMS? I don't know what that means. Could you explain a little bit more about what? Hey, Joe, about what OnRamp for October CMS would mean? Because to me, so October CMS is a CMS that some people use. It does happen to be created by Laravel, or created in Laravel, I mean. But you don't. So for anybody who hasn't tuned in one of these streams before, the goal of OnRamp is, hey, Spabby's Gary talking. Gary, it's great to see you, man. The goal of OnRamp is to make it as easy as possible, as clear as possible, as simple as possible for someone who wants a job writing Laravel to go from not knowing how to have that to knowing how to do, or sorry, not being able to get a job writing Laravel to being able to get a job writing Laravel as quickly and easily and clearly as possible, and for free, preferably. And so the goal for OnRamp is to only primarily teach the things that you need to know in order to get your average Laravel job. So there's a lot of really helpful skills. Like, for example, if you've ever read my book, it's called Laravel Up and Running, and O'Reilly has this Up and Running series that's supposed to be just enough to get working. And I kind of got sucked in and wrote a not up and running book. It's 500 pages long. Up and running is supposed to be like 200 pages. And so what I was originally planning to do here was to I was going to write my next book, and I was going to self-publish it, and the book was going to be basically like what I should have written based on the name of the book. And I'm really glad for that book, and I think it's a wonderful book, but I think the title's wrong. It's not Up and Running. So I was like, I'm going to write a Laravel Quick Start. I'm going to write this book. I'm going to self-publish it, and then I realized that the resource would be much better as not a book, and that's where OnRamp came from. And I realized I hadn't actually explained that. And so the goal here is to only teach the things that everybody needs to know, even though there's lots of other really wonderful things. So if somebody was asking, why don't you include some graph thing? And I'm like, well, that's cool, but you don't need to know that in order to get most Laravel jobs, so that's not going to go here. October CMS is amazing. It's so easy to make websites with it. Yeah, I'm sure it is, and I'm sure there's a lot of really wonderful tools that are really great. They're not the focus of OnRamp though. Those are great for Laracast or something like that, right? Like a how-to on used a specific tool. But I've never touched October CMS a day in my life, and I've got a job at a Laravel shop, right? So you don't need October CMS, even though I'm sure it's wonderful. You don't need to know how to use it in order to get a job doing Laravel, so it's not a good focus for OnRamp. Yeah, I'm sure it's great. And I mean that. I'm sure it's a wonderful tool that a lot of people love, and that's also true for the Laravel admin panel and lots of the other CMSs and tools and stuff like that that use Laravel. But yeah, thanks for asking. Great question. So here's where we are right now. Just a really quick recap. So OnRamp as it exists right now is purely powered by a single file or two files. One of them is learn.es.php and one of them is learn.en.php. And they're basically just the English and the Spanish versions of just an array that has a whole bunch of content. The structure of this content is not exactly the same as the structure of what we're building right now. So these are based around a resource. So it's sort of like a topic, I guess. A topic has a whole bunch of links. And some of the topics are children of a bigger topic. That's not really the structure we're building right now, but just so everyone knows, this is kind of what it looks like right now. What we're starting to build is something a little bit different. I actually intended to make a drawing and totally failed to do so of what the structure of what we're building right now is. But I actually did, I'm really glad I remember this. I did build out a simple Tailwind-based template, not design-wise, but just layout-wise to show what the structure of the things we're building right now are. October CMS, yeah. Okay, cool. So essentially, and I'll just kind of write it out here, like what our, so that we have this for our next time, because I always do like a little intro at the beginning. So we basically have our entities are tracks, modules, resources, skills, quizzes, which will probably have like questions underneath them, exercises, which will probably have things underneath them. These we're not building right now, but we'll build later, likely, but not 100% sure. And then maybe that's it. Users. And then completions, I think, which is basically the pivot between user and something. Rigmarole. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the word, getting the chance to use the word rigmarole, because it uses LTS versions. That makes sense. Hey, Jesse, good to see you, man. Okay, so these are our basic entities that we're working with here. And so we have already built out modules, resources, and skills, and users, because it comes for free. We're going to build tracks today, which I'll describe in a second. And we've also built out completions as well. So what is a track doing? And then I'm actually going to show you all what the page that I built out in Tailwind this weekend was. And I did cheat. I built out something, but it wasn't code for this actual application that I built this weekend. It was a sample so that I could show it to y'all. A track is so did I write this out anywhere? Yeah, here are our three tracks that we're almost definitely going to start with. New to programming track, WordPress track, and front-end developer track. And there's also just going to be a track that is I want to see everything, which is basically null track. So in each of these tracks are basically saying, where are you coming from? And that will help us contextualize which modules you should see. Some modules will be shown to everybody. Some modules will be shown in a similar state to everybody. So for example, there's going to be an Eloquent module of some sort for everybody, but we might have contextualized modules based on whether you are a WordPress developer or not a WordPress developer. And some modules will only be shown to certain people. For example, there's going to be some modules that are only for WordPress developers. Further, if you're new to programming, you need to learn a lot of things that WordPress developers and front-end developers already know. So that's how modules will be applied to the certain person. If you change tracks in the middle of your time with the site, you'll just see some modules you didn't before, and some modules you previously were seeing you won't see anymore. That doesn't really change your working relationship with what's completed or anything. It's just going to change what you see. Yeah, so here's my take on WordPress, because I saw an emoji that I have now since been taught that I think is the vomiting one, right? I think WordPress is one of the biggest reasons why PHP is popular. WordPress powers a huge percentage of the internet. There are an incredible number of WordPress developers who eventually become Laravel developers. There's an incredible number of WordPress developers who don't know how to transition from WordPress to something else, or who want to keep doing WordPress but also want to add other things into their stack. And so I think WordPress, if you think about it, the resources that are available for learning Laravel right now are primarily targeted to PHP developers. So we do a not as good job as we could of targeting non-PHP developers and bringing them into the fold. So the first place we should start is reaching more PHP developers and more. Oh, it's lol. What is that? Is he laughing? Oh, he's laughing, not vomiting. Okay, thanks. Well, either way, it was a negative thing. So anyway, I have my criticisms of WordPress, no question. But I've written, I wrote WordPress starting a long time ago. I actually started a CMS before WordPress existed called Campus Press, and then WordPress came out, and I just threw it all away and started using WordPress. So I've had my time with it. I have my criticisms of it. But if we're gonna be talking about helping people join the Laravel community who want to, PHP developers is our easiest target. And the biggest percentage of PHP developers in the world, especially those who'd be open to the possibility of learning and using Laravel, are WordPress developers. So first of all, that's why we have a WordPress track. But second of all, while I have my criticisms of WordPress, I also have my criticisms of PHP as a whole, and I have my criticisms of anything. I even have my criticisms of Laravel. So while, of course, I wouldn't choose to work in WordPress day to day, I also don't want to be too critical of WordPress, and especially not of WordPress developers. So, okay, cool. So that's what a track is. And so let's take a look. I always forget to close Telegram. That's what a track is. So a track, any module will be only in one track, I believe is what we decided last time. And any user will at any given moment be attached to a particular track. This user is on this track right now. So the WordPress, it's total biscuit, that emote. I don't know what that means. So just so anybody doesn't know, I'm not a Twitch person. I like video games a little bit, but I don't understand. I don't know Twitch culture. I don't know Twitch famous people or anything like that. So WordPress developer experience is less than nice, but as a tool for a company individual to get a website up and running, it's great and has a lot of extensions available. Totally agreed. Speaking of WordPress, there's another CMS that's a great alternative and built on Laravel. Jesse may or may not be speaking of Statamic, which we all know and love. Statamic is wonderful. What criticism of Laravel? Yeah. If you can't, there's some wonderful quote about patriotism that basically says, in essence, criticism is the truest form of patriotism, or something like that. Yeah, Statamic is wonderful, and the people behind Statamic are even more wonderful. Okay, so we were going to build out tracks, but real quick, I wanted to show y'all the page that I built, which I'm sure I just threw as an HTML file in here. I did not. Or did I put it up on a branch somewhere? Oh, I might have put it on Mast. Oh my goodness, I don't even know where I put it. Jesse means October CMS. Yeah, that is possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible. So this is, what did we do here? We just wrote out from, oh, I should actually open this in, do I have marked? I do. Hey, Joe. All right, so I wanted to open up the next steps.markdown in marked so that we can see whether this, I was a little bit worried that this thing right here is going to break because doing underscores. That's it. Oh, it's not GitHub style. Oh, I haven't used marked in a while. Am I doing my strike-throughs wrong? Maybe is it double tilde? Oh my goodness. Have I been doing it wrong this whole time? Man, I don't even know. You know what? Who cares? It's good enough. There's so many things we can waste all of our time on. All right, so what are we doing here? We are add list of entities to next steps. It's funny. I just realized I might have added it to README instead of next steps. Nope, I didn't. Okay, great, cool. All right, the reason I was doing this is because I wanted to see where I had put that file this weekend, and I thought, I put it in master, not in the database ones. Okay, so what I did is basically I went into, no wait, don't zoom out. I went into Tailwind and I built this thing out. So it's called sample-module.html. So onramp.test/sample-module.html, just to show what a module might potentially look like. And this is obviously not a design and probably not the final layout, but I wanted to show you all what's going to be there. But hold on, the best CMS in October is funny. If correctly understood, this checks why somebody coded and gives them information about that. All right, give me just a second. I'm going to follow through all these. So Samuel SK, or ISK, this checks why somebody coded and gives him information. Can you explain that question a little bit more? I'm not 100% sure which part you're asking about. Joe, the one you build yourself, what developer doesn't like to roll their own CMS? So Spabby, yes, not only is GAC an alias to get add and get commit-m, but also in my last stream, I said I would try to stop using my shortcuts so that people could actually know what I'm doing. Somebody mentioned that there's a way to program your bash aliases, so instead of just doing it, it does it and then echoes it out afterwards so people knowing what you're doing. So I said I was going to try and do that, and I never did. John, the problem you have with Twitch is you're not 15 to 24 years old. Your brain cannot commit it. Yeah, I am an old. I will be honest about that. Jesse, love what you're doing here. Thanks, friend. I missed what somebody coded, like unit tests. This checks what somebody coded. No, so this is the easiest way to explain what the different things are going to be is to actually show it right here. So a module is a thing that says it's a grouping of things you're going to learn. So this module right here is the module of build a website. This is going to be tasked to people who can't code, but this is not can't code yet, but not going to be tasked to WordPress developers or front-end developers. So in order to complete this module, you should believe that you have these skills. Write HTML, write CSS, write vanilla JavaScript. In order to help you understand whether you have or have not done this, you can take these quizzes, which we'll add later, we're not going to deal with right now, that help you understand have I or have not learned the academic knowledge. So it's going to be, true or false, multiple choice type things. And then finally, in order to give you practical application of what it looks like to do that thing, here are some exercises you complete that can give you practical, hands-on use of it. How do you learn it? You learn it by looking at the resources. There are resources for videos, and so there's resources that are free, resources that are paid, and within the free resources, I'm currently thinking it's probably going to be videos or courses and articles and audio, like podcasts, and then the paid, it's probably going to be videos, courses, and then books. There's not a lot of paid articles, not a lot of paid audio, and there's not a lot of free books, so that's why I kind of swapped those two out there. So this is the general thinking I'm imagining of what we're going to build, although in the short-term future, I don't think we're going to have quizzes and exercises. I'd rather like to get it work with tracks, modules, skills, and resources, and the ability to check them off and work your way through. Why is this not in Vue? Why on earth would this be in Vue? Why would you make something Vue that doesn't need to be Vue? Oh my goodness, that doesn't even make any sense. Okay, so I'm being a little snarky. I've also mentioned in previous streams that I believe that you should use the simplest possible tooling that you can. So there's nothing on this page that tells me that this should be in Vue. First of all, this is literally just a static HTML page that I use to show people what something might look like. But if we were talking about the actual application itself, that's when we might start asking that question of, wait a minute, well, this checkbox right here, it's going to have to fire, and then firing that on the page itself, that kind of thing. Okay, that might make more sense. So maybe when we're building the thing, we will find that Vue is the right answer for small pieces of it. And maybe even eventually we'll find that Vue is the right answer for the whole thing. But I never reach for a more complicated piece of technology when there's a simpler piece of technology that can do it just fine. Why add technical complexity, technical debt when you don't have to? But second of all, this application itself and these live streams are a part of helping other people learn how to code. Now, not everybody's going to sit through hours and hours of me blabbing on live streams in order to learn, but I am going to put this on OnRamp later and say, here's the full OnRamp code base, and here's the stream of me building it. And so I'm going to choose the things that you don't need Vue to get a job doing Laravel, so we're not going to use Vue unless we have to. You know what I mean? You're thinking this is the actual website. No, this is a HTML fake thing. The actual website is available right now at onramp.dev. Matt knows how to type. Okay, and this is also not Vue. But I don't think you would probably be asking that question seeing this. Okay, let's go back. Let's talk about what we're doing here. So we're going to move back to my branch. Oh, goodness. All right, so sorry. So GCO is get checkout. MES database backed learning. And then we're gonna clear and we're gonna go fresh. Okay, now we're actually doing the thing that we're doing today. Great. So what are we actually doing today? We're gonna add tracks. I kind of think that we might have begun. Okay, we didn't actually make it last time. So what we did was we started thinking through how the tracks relate to the other things. So at the end of last time, we said, what is a track? What things does it need to have? How does it relate to other things? And then how do we relate a module to a track? And so we had said, oh, here we go. Look at that. Next step for tracks. Make a table and a model for a track. Make a pivot for a module track. Build out the connective methods on the Eloquent classes and then write tests for them. Add a factory and then, I guess profit. Cool. My friend asked me if it's good to learn Laravel. I told him yes because of bigger marketing and tooling. Yeah, and hopefully you can send your friend over to onramp. I mean, honestly, you can send your friend over to onramp.dev right now. Here's some really great resources. Okay, cool. So first thing we're going to do is make a table and a model for track. All right, so let's make that. So PHP artisan make model, and then the name of your model, track, and then if you do migration like this, then you get a free migration with the appropriately named table at the same time. So now we have app/track.php, and now we have create tracks table.php. It's a little hard to see because I have everything zoomed up so much, but we can get started with these. So we said we're going to have an ID and we're going to have a name. So string name. Questions. Everything in a track have to be checked in order to consider it complete. I mean, I don't think there's even the concept of completing a track, because when you complete a track, you're done with OnRamp, really. I think the bigger question is, does everything in a module need to be complete in order to check it off? And I don't think the answer is yes. I mean, one of the reasons is because we have this idea that I've been at least exploring, that we would have, that's going to be onramp.dev /sample module, I think it was, of bonuses. And so there's, it'd be a little bit more confusing if you'd have to have these checked off. But further, this is really about guidelines. Nobody's going to be, you're not proving anything to anybody by checking this off. You're helping yourself guide yourself through the learning experience. And so if you think that you're done with this module, then check out the module. I don't care. I'm not going to make you sit and click through 100 things before you check it off. That's my current thinking. Okay, so a track has an ID, has a name. Fill our guard equals ID. And then what else are we going to build? So we're going to add a track ID to the user. So a user can be choosing a given track at any given moment. And then we're going to also give them track. So or belongs to, I think. If you learn anything from these live streams, it's that you're going to know that I always forget which method name is which and which direction is which for Eloquent every time, no matter how many times I've done it, no matter how many times I've learned it, no matter how many times I've written about it in a book. I still really struggle to remember database relationship names. I'm streaming tomorrow with Frake, looking at the internals of ignition if anyone fancies it. Plug! Everything my friend Fabi does is glorious and beautiful, so I would definitely recommend checking that out. GH. All right, so what are we doing? We were making a migration, so we're going to do PHP artisan make migration, and then we're going to say add track ID to users table. So this allows us to relate a given user to a given track, saying they have picked that track. And one of the things you can do here is you can pass in a table flag, which makes it possible to pre-fill that table name in the migration when you create it. All right, so then we're going to add track ID to users table, and as you can see, it pre-filled users here and there. So we're going to then table, and we're going to add a big int. Is it unsigned big int? I think actually. Track ID. Let's look at our track migration real quick. Big increments. Yeah, I think it's unsigned big int. It's been a while. And then we'll do a foreign, which I also always forget. It's going to be track ID references ID on tracks, I think is what it is. This is really hard to see in this really short thing. Launchpad McQuack, I thought it was the only one like completely random names for my machines. Mine's not completely random. All of my machines are named after Disney characters and Pixar counts too. So, including my phones. My phone right now I think is named Frozone. Okay, so what was I doing? I was modifying this to add this, and so this would be table. I think it's drop foreign, but we'll learn. Track ID. That's probably actually not right, but that's okay. Table, drop column, track ID. Okay, cool. So in theory, if I wrote those correctly, which I believe I didn't, unsigned integer. Okay, thanks. It fits. Okay, so if I wrote those correctly, we have now created a track with ID and a name. We have associated a user with a track. It's nullable. I don't expect us to be deleting tracks, and I don't actually want that to be possible, so I'm not going to handle any kind of like cascade or anything like that. And then we need to create our pivot table. And I'm almost 100% sure that a pivot table is alphabetical single table names. And so since we're relating the module to the track table, it should be named module track. If I'm wrong on that, anybody can let me know. Like I said, I wrote a book and still forget all these things. So we're going to do this, migration, create module track table dash dash create equals module track. Not everybody keeps increments and timestamps on their pivot tables, but I like them, so we're going to keep them. And so then we're going to create more unsigned big integers, and then we're going to foreign key them. All right, I can't do this. Sorry. Unsigned big integer. So what are we going to have? We're going to have the module ID, and then we're going to have the track ID, and then we're also going to do our two foreigns there. So table, foreign, module ID. J. Erlinson, Jonas. Thank you. What? Thank you for what? What I do? Oh, because it was so hard to read. Yeah, it was killing me too. References, ID on modules, and then this is track ID on tracks. I think that's right. Probably. We'll see, I guess. All right, so first we want to migrate it and see if the migration works and see what breaks. Cannot add for any key constraint alter table completions. That would mean that there's a previous one that I had written and not run, which is embarrassing. I was about to do this. This is migrate. PHPR is in migrate fresh, which dumps all the existing tables. It doesn't try to run the downs and backs ups. It just fresh does it from scratch. And then I also want to do dash dash seed. So that's MFS is the shortcut that I often use there. Yeah, same constraint. So we tried to add a constraint in completions and it didn't work. What did I do wrong? Hey, Abdullah, completions table. It's weird because I thought we would have run these last time. Well, here's one thing we did wrong. Unsigned big integer. User ID. So in the completions table, we were trying to connect a completion to a user. Foreign user ID references ID and users. So I must have that syntax wrong. Cannot add foreign key constraint. Why? Anybody see what I'm doing wrong here? I'm sure it's really obvious. General error, cannot add foreign key constraint. Alter table completions, add constraint completions user ID foreign for foreign key user ID references users ID. Good Lord, we might have to be going to the Laravel docs to learn how to do foreign key relationships. Let's do it, huh? I'm sure that somebody here is going to come in and tell me in just a minute what typo I've made here. Unsigned big integer, foreign references on, no, that's literally what we're doing here, right? Am I doing something wrong? Type mismatch, which you just corrected. Oh, type mismatch because it wasn't unsigned. Yeah, that's, hey, thanks, John. You were 100% correct. That's exactly what it was. All right, so the problem that we ran into there is this was a big integer instead of an unsigned big integer. I didn't even realize that they would give you such an unhelpful error in that circumstance. Okay, cool. So we didn't get any errors from these, so maybe I actually typed them correctly. So the next thing we want to do, let's go to our next steps. We have made a pivot and a table and a model for track. We have made a pivot table for module track. And now let's build out the connective methods and potentially some tests. But like I said last time, I'm a little wary of testing things only because I don't want to necessarily test that Eloquent works. So it's always a little bit like, I just wrote code. I want to test this code, but I'm not sure if I want to write a test for something that all the test is doing is that Eloquent's doing its job. Thanks, John. All right, so what do we want to do for the connective method? So we're basically relating a user to a track, and then we're relating modules to tracks. So let's go to our user and our module. I might have actually already written this one a second ago. Yeah, okay, so I did this. So we want to test that. And then we want to go to our track and then our module. So let's go to module. So module. So this one is the one to many. Is this belongs to as well? Or kind of module? See, that's, I guess we were doing it this way because I said a module can, oh yeah, because a module can be in multiple tracks. So that's going to be a many-to-many pivot. Is that belongs to many? I don't even remember this stuff anymore. I'm serious, y'all. Like this is like basic level intro to Laravel stuff that I still forget the syntax every friggin' time. Every time. All right, and then the track has users, if we care. I don't know if we do. And then it has modules. Now remember, we also had talked a little bit last time about the possibility of adding an order, which I did not do here. So let's do that. Create module tracks. So basically the idea behind this is because right now it's just going to sort the modules within a track by ID, but I really do think we want to do order. So actually I'm going to do this. Table, integer, order, default. What would a good default be for that? 0 or 1? I guess it's 0. I'm not sure. You are a bit alone. I think you mean you're not alone, and thank you for that and for getting all these things. All right, so we also have to flesh out how order works, and we'll probably test that as well. Okay, so connective methods. So a user has a track has users and modules, a module has modules. A module has a module. As a track as well. Surprise. So let's take a look. So return this has many user class. Okay. So in theory, we should be able to test those out. So I think the best way I want to test them out is by adding factories and seeders for them and then running the seed and see if it works. That's a decent test because that test ensures that when you do basic seedy things, they actually work. So let's go into our factory. One thing you all might notice is that I'm clicking more than I'm doing other things, and I'm also retyping things. I'm trying to do that because I realize that I use so many shortcuts in a database basis and like text expander things that I think it would be hard for someone to follow along who doesn't understand how Laravel works. So I'm trying to slow myself down. So if you see me doing things, you're like, why would you do that instead of copy pasting or instead of just command Ping, whatever? I'm trying to slow things down. Some of them might be just because I'm slow. I mean, that's totally a possibility for lots of them, but I'm trying to slow myself down a little bit. All right, so we want to make a new factory for a track. So let's do PHP artisan, make factory, oops, track. I think that was like track factory, and then I feel like there was a model equals track. I think that's how that works. Take a look, does it look good? Hey, yo. All right, and so what do we have in a track? We've got a name. And I think last time we just did like a sentence or something like that. Let's just try that. So there's different ways to test these things out right when you make them, but sometimes I like to do Tinker. And if you're not familiar with Tinker, it's a REPL. So it's a read, evaluate, print loop. So it's basically I can type Laravel into here, Laravel, code with my framework. So I type PHP into here and run it. So if I want to test out generating an instance of the track class, I would do this. I would say t equals, so t is my assignment variable, factory track class create. It just says create a new instance of the track class. I thought it would alias track to app/track, but maybe it's not, or maybe that's another error we just ran into there. Okay, that's weird. I thought it would be smart enough to use the track namespace. All right, so it looks like it's working fine, and you look at each of them and you see that they're a little bit different. Cool. So we did the factory for the track pretty well. And now we want to update our module and user factories to make sure that they don't break, because they're now going to be expecting a track and they won't have them by default. So this is where things get a little bit, actually let's do module because it's going to be simpler. So we want to have every single time you run this for it to pick one of the possible tracks. But I feel like there's a trick to doing that makes it so it doesn't have to do an Eloquent query every single time for all the tracks. The problem is I can't remember what that is. So what we're going to do is, first of all, just like we did on our last one, we want to be able to pass in a track rather than it generating a brand new track every time. So basically there's three ways to handle creating an item that should be related to something else. Number one, you can pass in the thing it should be related to. So let's say we already had a track like we did here, right? So if I want to create a module, I might say factory module class create, and I might want to pass in that module ID. Anyway, imagine this was the module I was creating. That module, I might want to pass in a track ID because I already had this track, right, like this. So that's one way. The next way is to generate it and expect it to generate a new one every time. The last way is to generate it and to expect it to look up an existing one out of the database every time. The problem is, while it looking up some out of the database seems very desirable in a lot of contexts, it sets up the expectation now that you can't run this one unless you've already seeded the other one. And that makes it a little bit less flexible. So what I'm likely going to do, even though it's a little bit not what I want, is do the whole thing where you're basically saying, if somebody doesn't pass me in a track ID, create a new track, even though there's a lot of scenarios that we might run into that are undesirable there. I think that's going to be our best option. So basically, if I'm creating a module and I don't pass in a track ID, then run this closure, and the closure creates an instance of the track class, creates it, and then returns its ID. So we set it up here. All right. So that's the module factory. So we're going to do that same thing on the user then. But the interesting thing is some users should probably not have a track, which is the hairier thing. So sometimes we want this to be null, and sometimes we want it to generate one. Now, in theory, we could allow that differentiation to happen purely just by the sake of passing in null for some of them or not, which we may end up being happier with as a solution. Right now, what I'm going to do is probably just do basically a random thing. So half the time you get one generated for you, and half the time you get null. So I think I just had this last time. There was a fake. I had written it in PHP, but there was a faker way to do it, so I wanted to use the faker way to do it. So I think it was something like faker boolean, something like that. And so sometimes you get a true, and sometimes you get a false. So I think what I would do here is if I get a false, I would return null. Otherwise, I'd generate one. I kind of think that was what we used last time. Faker boolean, Vince Mitchell. Thanks, exactly. So we're just going to try that for this time. So now 50% of the time you're going to get a generated track. 50% of the time you're going to get null. But you can also just set it yourself when you generate this thing. All right. So what all were the things we were doing here? We are doing user has a track. And then updating the user factory. Module has a track, and we set up the module factory. Track, okay, and then track factory. So the track factory can't be generating modules and users for itself. So literally all it's just going to set up is its own name. Okay, so first of all, let's see if we broke anything. We're just going to run our friend MFS, which remember is PHP artisan migrate fresh seed. This runs all of our seeders. Okay, so we did break an existing seeder by forgetting to import track in probably the user class, but which one are we in right now? This is actually harder than I expected to see which one doesn't have it. I could go just look through them really quick, but I actually want to ensure that I have the ability to either figure this out really quickly, or if I can't figure this out really quickly, then we should maybe see if we can make this easier for future Laravelians. So let's try this with a greater level of, what's it called, verbosity, and see, do we actually get the, so this is getting the user out of there. It's making an instance. So it's probably in the user is my guess, because that's my raw attribute. So let's just try it and let's see if I forgot to import track. Okay, so I did. So forgot to import track on the user. That was harder than I hoped it would be to figure out. So this might be, if anybody's looking for some open source stuff to do in Laravel, you might just take a look at this one thing and say, if I've forgotten something like a use or whatever in Cedar, it's pretty difficult to figure out which Cedar the problem is. Track ID equals, yeah. So I think I actually remember. So this, we used to have to do this right here in order to make it so that it didn't create a new track every single time. I do think that the latest version of Laravel is actually, you don't have to do this, and you can actually just do this right here. The problem is the moment you pull that ID out, or actually no, I think you actually just do this in the latest version. Problem is the moment you pull that ID out, you no longer, whatever thing it's doing to basically sniff out this and not run it in certain circumstances, I think it's not going to be sniffing. And so basically, I don't think that idea that you just suggested is going to work. I could be wrong. Yeah, so the new way would be to do this. And actually, I think we could do that in the other one, right? What is the other one we put a track on? Oops, module factory. Yeah, so this right here is no longer necessary. There's a new tool that came in because of new Laravel, and it's really great. So you can replace this with factory track class, which is awesome. It's so much simpler. You might be tempted to do this. Don't do that, because then if you pass in your own, you will still, this one will still be created and then kind of thrown away. So you're going to start filling up your database with a bunch of them. But if you do this, Laravel sniffs that this is a factory builder instance and then says only run it and create it and pass in the ID if this is the case. However, I don't believe that there's any way to do that here, because we need to be conditionally returning factory class or not. So yeah, so I think, but I'm glad, because I hadn't done that right on the module factory, so thank you. Okay, so hurt my neck working out this morning, so sorry for all this random rubbing of neck. Okay, so let's go run this again. Okay, great. So we now have a functional migration in seed. There's a lot that's been going on here, right? Like, I think we're jumping through a lot of things. So let's step back for a second and say, what did we actually do? Well, we definitely built out the connective methods. I don't know whether I'm going to build out tests for them, but we at least have the ability for all those things to exist. And we actually already added a factory. So let's add seeds. Let's say add tests question mark, but I'm not sure. Because again, I don't want to just test Eloquent. So what we want to do is, now that we've built out factories for updated users that have a track and updated modules that have a track, and for tracks, let's go update our seeders so that we get those seeded for us off the top of our head. So one thing you might be surprised to see is that usually when we have seeders, we allow the factories to run with them. But I want seeds that make a little bit more sense, both because I like that in general, but also because I think it makes it more easy to reason about things when you're trying to do architecture as you go. And since we're doing architecture as we go, and a lot of people tuning in don't fully understand what's a track, what's a module, I think having them actually be named appropriately for what they are makes more sense, at least for the seeder. So what we're doing in here is we basically have modules, and each of the modules has a name, it's got a couple skills, and it's got a couple resources. So that makes it really easy to build out modules this way. So the problem is the tracks are going to be a little bit harder, because now we need to decide which modules are in which tracks, but these modules don't, in my array syntax right here, don't have an ID. Now I could just say find the one with this string and match it, and that might be what we do. We also might just do it randomly. So let's make 2 tracks by default. And we're just going to do it again in simple arrays, and then in our for each down here, we will work through our simple arrays, and then we will build actual factory instances from that. So what do we have in tracks? We just got names. So our first one's going to be front-end developers, and our second one, oops, I am still struggling with this keyboard after 2 years. Story of my life. And oh my god, name is going to be WordPress developers. Okay, quit it, commas everywhere. Great. So then we can for each that, for each tracks as track. Keyboard killing me here. All right, and then so what do we want to do? We want to make a track. So factory track class create, and then name equals track name, and that's it. So we've created our track. So the problem is we now need to have each of our modules related to one of these tracks. The simplest way to do this, collect each. Yeah, so collect each is great, but collect each is not actually any better here. It's not any less code. And so it's basically like, I love collections. I think collections are brilliant, and I tend to wrap things up in Laravel collections by default just because I might later want to do a map or reduce or whatever else it ends up being. But in this circumstance, it's not any clearer, it's not any less code, and it's a higher onboarding cost for new developers to understand. And so for that reason, for example, like tap, I feel even more strongly about that. I think that tap is almost never the right solution. And I think that almost all the times that tap is the right solution, it's because someone who really groks tap is the only person who's working the code base, which is often the case when you have an Adam or a Taylor or whoever else who often uses tap. They're usually the primary worker, or somebody else who already really groks tap. So tap is great in that circumstance. So, but I do agree. Collections, Laravel collections are great. And if anybody who is a Laravel programmer has not already read Adam Watham's book, Refactoring the Collections, I highly, 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 highly recommend it. Okay, so where's Adam? Beat him to collection compliance, Adam. Exactly. That lull thing that y'all are doing here, it looks so much like that guy is vomiting to me. It's going to be really hard for me to learn it as a guy laughing. So I will get there one day. All right, so for starters, or for now, what I'm probably going to do is for each of our modules as we're factoring it, I'm just going to pick one of the tracks. I don't really love that, honestly. I just need to step back. Need a bigger screen. Oh, if I was zoomed in, it would be clearer. I have a pretty big screen, actually. 27-inch, I think it is. But I could zoom you all in, but I'm not going to. Okay, so what is the... You click on the emote. Thanks, Imagine a Puddle. Click on it, and you get a bigger one. So I'm not, just so you know, yeah, it doesn't work for me. I'm not actually looking at y'all's chats in your native things because some of y'all are in Twitch and some of y'all are on YouTube. I'm using something called Restream, and it has an app. So imagine people using tap to be casting voodoo spells and chanting the code. Yeah, basically, that's exactly what they're doing. Oh, okay, that makes way more sense. I don't know who this guy is, but at least it's now embedded in my head as not vomit. So thank you for that, Vince. Okay, cool. So what I'm trying to figure out is how do I actually want this to be laid out? So I kind of want I kind of would like a module. How many modules? I only have 2 modules. That's the problem. I would like a track that has 2 modules and a different track that has 2 modules. Some of them are shared and some of them are not shared, but I would need to build out more modules for that. So I think right now I'm just going to put every module. No, we're going to put module 1 in track 1, module 2 in track 2. I think. Goodness, I can't make up my mind. How do I want to do this? Sorry, y'all. I just have to figure out the architecture I want here for our seated ones. Okay, we're actually going to do this. We're going to do it the most manual way because it's going to be the way that makes the most sense. So Eloquent for WordPress developers. I don't think I like this title here, but I'm going to try and just this is the concept we're going to try and get across, even if it's not the title. Eloquent for non-WordPress. I don't like this because it makes people who don't write WordPress as like the non, and really they're going to be the majority. So, do we need a track for total beginners? Yes, and I'm not seeding that one right now, but there would eventually be that one. But you know what? What the heck? It's not going to take a lot of work to set that one up, so let's just do it. New to programming. I don't know what the name for those ones is going to be, so we're just going to call it this for now. Okay, so goodness, I feel like I'm reaching the point where I might be over architecting this, and I don't want to do that. Trying to keep it simple. I'm trying not to actually build out the entire thing right now because this is just a seeder. This is not actually the real thing. All right, you know what? That's just fine. We'll just make model. This is not actually what's going to be in the end, so it's okay. Make migrations. And then something super WordPressy. Actually, that's probably going to be all of it. And that's just going to be like intro to Eloquent. And that's one will be like Eloquent for WordPress people. Okay, and then this one's going to be basically exactly the same, except I'm going to give it a different resource, and then we're going to call it a day. I think it's actually better if I do that. Okay, cool. So we've got those basic modules set up. We've got our 3 tracks, but now I'm still back in the same situation where I have to decide which ones relate to which ones. I'm trying to do it without having to add a slug to each of these. I'm trying to do it without it just being purely random. I'm trying to do it where some of them are related to 1, some related to 2, some to 3. Oh my goodness. I think for now, I'm going to just relate every module to 1 track and then move on because I don't like being stuck on this. This is meant to be sample data, just get something on the screen. What about arrays of names, skills, and resources randomly assigned enough to work with? Arrays. Hey, JT, what are arrays of names, skills, resources, and that's actually what it's doing here basically is name, skills, resources. But the thing we need to do is figure out how to attach them to a track. So I think what I'm really going to, well, JT, these are actually already factoried. They're there. But this seeder, I want to go a little bit more manual because I want it to make sense as soon as we get on the page. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give every single module a single track. It's going to be random, and that's going to be it for now. And if we want to build more, we will. So remember when we were putting the track specification in the module, it's going to create one if we don't pass one in, which we don't want. So what we want to do is basically just say, I don't know if you can do this. Is there like a random item in the data collection items, random element or random? Hey, look at that, random. Perfect. So we've pulled up tracks once, so we're not looking up every single time. And then when you're creating this module, then you basically are going to assign it to one of the tracks. So I guess this would be ID. I think that's it. I think that's going to work. How about the WordPress Eloquent to WordPress track and the other one, both new to programming? I'm not sure what your question. Oh, I think you were talking to me as I was building, and now you're good. So okay, cool. All right, so let's try it. Let's see what happens. All right, we got an error. I accidentally left the verbose on. Let's take it off. Class track not found. Story of my life. All right, take 2. Unknown column track ID in field lists and modules. Do we not add a track ID in the modules? It's not a fillable issue. Create modules table. No, it's not in the create module. It would have been add track to modules. Oh, wait. It's because it's not track. Oh, my goodness. Modules to tracks is many to many. How did that factory made even work before? It's setting the track ID, but we don't have a track ID in a module because it's a many to many. Oh, my goodness. A module can exist outside of its relationship with the track, so attached to track. this is where I have to remember also, what's the correct syntax for a many-to-many? Is it attach or save? Let's just try attach. Oh, random returns a collection? Thanks. That would be helpful to know. If it does, then we just need to pull first off of it. It looks like it doesn't anymore. It's just giving us a single track there. But thank you. I can't pronounce that because I don't know how to read Cyrillic letters. I apologize. Well, it's not attached. Oh, because I can't just save it. I need to do tracks. Let's make sure we actually wrote that correctly, because it's the type of relationship we're working with on these is killing me. Yeah, that's the problem. There's no track. It's tracks. This is why you need tests. But like I said, I like to start building these and run them, and then we can start understanding what actual functional tests might look like. Okay, so that might be working. So if that worked correctly, yeah, I was thinking that same thing. No worries. All right, so let's just say we want our first module. So module equals app module first, and then so module tracks. Let's see what we get. M tracks. We got a single track. Great. So in theory, that worked. Again, this is why I want to test this kind of stuff, because I'm like, well, I just wrote a whole bunch of code and I have no tests for it. And that always makes me feel weird, because I don't want to test that Eloquent's working, but I do want to test that I actually wrote these relationships correctly. So what I'm likely to test is basically just if I attach these things the way I'm thinking, do I end up with the results that I want? But even that is just a little bit smelly. It's just prices, exactly how my development cycle goes when I'm doing this sort of thing. Yeah, if anybody didn't see my tweet the other day, if you have any imposter syndrome, just come hang out and watch me bash my head against the keyboard for a while, and you'll feel very much more comfortable about your development abilities. Now, granted, there's some really complicated things that I have some experience with, and I'm like, you'd be like, oh man, this guy really knows his stuff. But when we're doing this stuff, I have the same problem. Actually, that's probably not even true. Yeah, I'm an idiot the whole way through. But especially here, it's like, yeah, I've got to remember one-to-many, attach versus associate versus whatever. It just takes, our brains don't live in these spaces all the time. And if I wrote migrations and relationship methods all day long, I'd be better at them. But really, I write them at the beginning of the project, and then I often don't think about them for a while. Okay, so we added a seed. We are still having the question mark about tests, and now we have this order concept. It's technically the end of the stream, and people have mentioned that I don't like it when we, cut off a very natural part of the stream because it's been an hour. That was a pretty good stopping point, because I did just come back to next steps, markdown. So what would tests look like? Let's say we were to build out tests for tracks. Well, let's look at what tests we built out last time, because I remember I was asking this exact same question about how far do we really want to go. So this one, we were doing it, we could test because we wrote a custom method on our model, so that made more sense. And these ones are tests based on the work that Claudia did about, that I did was refactoring her work about locales. So these ones don't really make, so yeah, at no point have we actually just tested that our relationships are working. I'm kind of inclined to just ensure that when we build out this whole order concept, we have tests that will then prove out all this kind of stuff. Because again, I don't, like, you could write a test that just says like create a new module, attach the module, basically does what that seed does, and then asserts you don't have any errors doing it, or assert that like the modules, track arrow modules gives you that one. But again, like, there's no code that you're testing there other than just the fact that you wrote has many. And so I'm a little bit skeptical of those. I'm not 100% against them, still thinking about it, but I'm a little bit skeptical of them. So, okay, so we don't need this anymore because we just did that. So add tracks is very close to done, but not entirely done, because we have this idea of order. Actually, let's just do this. Add the idea of the order of modules within a track. And honestly, like, investigate where else do we need to order. We probably need order on a lot of these things, which is a little bit scary, because there's places where the order of something versus something else might be different depending on the context, and then we have to create pivots that weren't previously pivots purely for the sake of adding an order thing. Or hopefully that won't happen. All right, cool. So Let's just kind of run some things. Let's do migrate fresh seed. Does that run correctly? Great. Let's run our tests. We didn't touch them, but make sure they didn't break anything. Great. And then let's go look at what we did. We created the, we fixed a bug. We created the tracks and module tracks. We basically just created tracks. So again, I was about to use this shortcut, but instead we'll actually compose a really nice message here. I could have kind of taken these different changes into different commits if I was feeling like taking my time a little bit more. For example, fixing this bug in the completions table is a different problem than the rest of what we did, but I'm just being a little bit lazy, to be honest. So let's just git commit and then write our message. So what do? We essentially create and relate tracks. There's a few other things we did. We fixed a bug in the completions table migration. We created create a tracks table model, add relationships to tracks model and related models, and then update seeder to add tracks. Any plan in future for doing something with Laravel Nova? I think it's unlikely that OnRamp covers Nova because you don't need to know Nova to get a job. So I'm pretty darn sure the answer is no. I have toyed around with the ideas, as you can see in the in that sample thing. With the idea of bonus. So you got bonus things like you don't need to know Tailwind in order to get a job doing Laravel, but it would be kind of nice. And so I think things like Nova might fit into a bonus module somewhere. There might be other bonus modules where there's things like you don't need this to get any Laravel job, but you'd really set yourself aside if you really knew X, Y, and Z really well. So there might be like a bonus one about using Laravel Forge and Vapor, or a bonus one about Nova, but I'm not sure about those yet. One of the reasons that's difficult is because Nova is a tool that I think is wonderful, but plenty of people would say I'd rather use a different tool to solve that same problem. And so I don't want to have to then like do Nova and October CMS and Quick Admin Panel and whatever else. I'd rather just say, learn these things, and then a lot of it will depend on where you work, depend on who you are and what you're doing in that particular moment. But I'm not sure because, I think knowing how all the basic Laravel stuff works would be good as bonus. And no, you don't have to be an experienced Nova user or an experienced, cashier user or something like that in order to get a job at your average Laravel shop, though. All right, update seeder to add tracks. I kind of think that's all we did. So let's do that. And then I think that is it for today. So in theory, I'm back Friday at 11 Eastern. I think that's going to be my regular time. And hopefully next time I will have figured out all my fun new Stream Deck stuff, like my little timer, my countdown timer, and not accidentally starting muted and all that kind of good stuff. So thank you all for coming. This will be on YouTube after the fact, as always. Remember, so you go to mattstauffer.com/stream, you can see the links for the individual streams, and then you can also see all the stream archives. If you're looking for one of these and it's not on this Building OnRamp and Twitch playlist, it's because it's been uploaded to YouTube, but I have forgotten to tag it with this collection. So just go look at my channel and you'll see it in there. There can be a bonus track to be completed after your basic track with all the extra Laravel things. That is a really interesting idea. It would require us refactoring how we're thinking about tracks right now, but it's a really interesting idea. So, all right, thank you, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Let me find the button.